All right, we are back today talking about another quarterback prospect in Will Levis of Kentucky. Will Levis, a very talented guy that we think is going to climb up in the NFL draft and as a result climb up in Dynasty drafts. You're going to want to get the full scoop on this. But first, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We've got all kinds of new rookie content coming out now that it's the Dynasty season, and that's the off season. We're going to be bringing you the best coverage, the best analysis on these players, on the class as a whole, mock drafts, startup drafts, everything you can imagine. So make sure you hit subscribe. We're going to get you best prepared to win your Dynasty leagues. Make sure you like the video. Let's get in on Will Levis. So with our beloved Indianapolis Colts sitting at the 5th pick, we have, and a completely incapable quarterback in Matt Ryan who literally can't move. We have been dreaming of what quarterback that we might be able to get in this NFL draft. And luckily, to our advantage, we have a very solid quarterback class coming in this year. And I think you're going to hear a lot of the hype around Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, which is great. We're doing videos on those guys this week. You're going to hear all about them. They're going to get very good draft capital as well, and that's awesome. The third guy, pretty much consensus, is Will Levis. And if you look around, some of the NFL draft scouts, if you look around some of the professional analysts, quotation marks, some of them have Will Levis over those guys. I mean, Will Levis is starting to get a little bit of buzz and a little bit of hype in the NFL. Because people are starting to realize that his situation, that the circumstances that Will Levis was placed in this year really heavily contributed to what was considered production-wise a disappointing year for him. But in reality, Will Levis got the size. He's got a lot of athleticism for that size as well. He's got a cannon for an arm. And really, we think he's going to be a guy where after the combine, after we start seeing him mocked, maybe top 5, most likely top 10. I mean, I don't think he makes it out of the top 8 picks. You're going to see him skyrocket up these Dynasty rookie drafts, and rightfully so in Superflex leagues. So let's get into Will Levis. Between the three of us, we have watched a lot of Will Levis film. We spent almost all last week watching Will Levis trying to. I mean, I eventually started daydreaming of him on the Colts and how his offensive line was so bad at Kentucky he would just transition straight into having a bad offensive line on the Colts. But with Will Levis, let's talk about what he has done well in his situation this year. So, Simon, from a college production standpoint, what did you like from Will Levis this year, and why were his numbers, not only a step back from last year, but when you're thinking of it in context, not very impressive as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, he had a horrible situation at Kentucky. He lost his offensive coordinator last year. Forget his name, blanking me right now. But he was gone. So last year, he had a sufficiently run offense, I guess you could say. He had a good target in Wan'Dale Robinson. He had his O-line was okay.
Better than this year.
Yeah, definitely better than this year. And one thing you like to see Will Levis doing is, even with a not ideal situation where other guys like Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud have really good situations, he's able to create out of nothing, and he's able to step up in the pocket and make a play just appear. He's able to throw his guys open, and he's able to read defenses really well, and often he's able to process well. However, I will say that sometimes, because of his bad situation, it is kind of almost created more problems in him, and I say almost because we see that a lot. I mean, you see it in guys like Zach Wilson, where he has good pocket presence, and that unfortunately kind of leads him to he'll sense the pressure and roll out and just kind of panic and throw to guys, and that's what you don't like to see. But at the same time, Will Levis is like I've been saying, he's able to create, and at the next level, when oftentimes you see those guys going at the early first round, they're not going into a good situation. Let's say Will Levis goes 1-on-1. He's drafted to the Texans. That's not a good situation. They needed someone like Deshaun Watson, who could just step up into the pocket and extend plays, and he really was that offense. And you need someone that talented to succeed in the NFL.
Which is why I'm thinking that Levis, while his talent level is very high, I'm not sure that Levis will go as high as we might fear. He might go outside of the top 5. He might.
You really think he makes it past Indy if he's the third quarterback off the board?
No, I think I'm saying Indy will probably have a solid chance to get him, and this is why. So Houston has, I don't even know how many draft picks they got for the Deshaun Watson deal.
couple.
I think it's safe to say that next year's quarterback class is probably better than this one. And Caleb Williams, I think, is sort of leading that class where we're thinking he's probably going to be the first one off the board, barring anything crazy that happens next year. But there is a chance that even though Houston has the 101, there is a chance that they build the rest of their team, their offensive line, their defense, and they because they're not expecting to make the playoffs or be a super competitive team next year. And why not build up the rest of your team in preparation for the young quarterback that you're eventually going to bring in? Why draft a quarterback now like Young, Stroud, or Levis for a team like the Texans when you can get potentially a better one next year and put them in a better situation? Because we've seen this, and this has resulted in the death of so many promising quarterbacks in the NFL. There's this process of drafting where it's like, we are so bad, we need a quarterback. So let's draft a quarterback first, and then let's build around him. But by the time you get to even thinking about building around him,
he's retired.
He's
like
dead.
Andrew Luck.
He's literally dead. Like this happened to Sam Darnold on the Jets. Any potential that he had, any athleticism, athletic upside, and arm strength and talent that he had was just thrown out the window because there was no one there. So there is a chance that there are a couple teams up there in the top 5 that pass up on a quarterback, and Levis can fall to the 5th or lower. I guess that's all I'm saying. With Levis, I think that the best situation for him is going to be a team that's ready for him, that has receiving talent, that has at least a somewhat respectable offensive line. Like, you can't really get in a worse situation than he had in college. What are some other landing spots that you think are good for him?
Yeah, and going back to, just his skill set as a whole, you're looking at how athletic he is for his size. Like, I mean, that's really impressive. I'm looking at his high school workouts. I mean, he's in the 99th percentile for a 20-yard shuttle. He's in the 96th percentile for vertical jump. He has a 35-inch vert. For a 6'3", 220 dude, and 91st percentile in speed score. So, not only is Will Levis bringing that, that height and weight that you're looking for in an NFL quarterback. He's a big dude. He's going to be able to carry himself well. Obviously, he's a little bit older at 23 and a half. But the man is athletic as all get out for a guy that size. And thinking about how that's going to translate in the NFL really gravitates towards and enjoys quarterbacks that can improvise, quarterbacks that are good when things go wrong. It's why Bryce Young has become such a popular figure pre-draft here, and it's why he's projected to go at this point the 101. With Will Levis, I mean, I think you saw about as much of that last year as you could. Obviously on paper, because he had the worst offensive line he possibly could have. He had negative rushing yards, but that's because they take sacks into account. When you're looking at some of the plays Will Levis was actually able to get out of the pocket and create downfield, I mean, you saw him hurdling dudes. Like, I mean, if that reminds you of somebody big, somebody that's athletic, somebody that can hurdle dudes. I mean, he's not the next Josh Allen, but you're looking at his athleticism and you're like, okay, you're seeing shades of that type of play style, being able to go out looking to run, looking to be aggressive. And while that's been, a downfall for certain types of NFL players, we've seen it work with Josh Allen. And because of that, the Bills' offense, I mean, that they've built around this guy who is a great passer, has a great arm, and is athletic, it is completely multidimensional because teams have to be worried about Josh Allen on the ground. They have to be worried about their running backs out in the flats. They have to be worried about Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis deep. I think with Will Levis, if he does develop, especially from a processing standpoint in the pocket, I mean, similar to C.J. Stroud, you're looking at Will Levis kind of forcing things sometimes into what might be his first read, sometimes having a little bit of trouble analyzing the defensive scheme at the time. If he can work through those things, looking natural ability and talent level, I mean, you're looking at Will Levis to be a very, very good NFL quarterback. And again, the production, he had 2,400 yards this year. He had 19 touchdowns, and I think he had 10 picks. It's not on here, but
yeah, 10.
But so obviously the ratio-wise, But again, you're getting pressured you're getting pressured like crazy every single time, and he's having to make some pretty freaking quick decisions here. I mean, there's not a ton to be said.
It's so tough because you kind of want to look over the quantity that he has statistically this past year, with only 2,400 passing yards. That's not great. Only 19 passing touchdowns and 10 interceptions. He only played 11 games. If you look at him from his first year at Penn State and going all the way up to his final year at Kentucky, in terms of efficiency, he has gotten better and better and better. And you like to see that improvement there. He goes from 59.6% completion percentage to 60 to 66. And then he kind of maintains that this year with just a way worse situation than in 2021. And his yards per attempt are solid. They're better than Bryce Young's. He had 8.5 yards per attempt this year. I think with the situation in Kentucky, it's going to be one of the greatest enigmas that the NFL is going to have to solve for us when it comes to Will Levis's value in Dynasty. And that is going to be key. Yeah. Are they willing to take that shot on a guy who probably has the biggest chance to bust over Stroud and Bryce Young, but he debatably, I would say, has the highest ceiling of the three of them.
Yeah, I mean, you could be accused of making a lazy take when comparing him to Josh Allen, but it really is a similar situation. Josh Allen coming out of Montana, being the 7th overall pick.
That was Wyoming.
Oh yeah, Wyoming.
Yeah,
Same difference. No one cares, anyways. Yeah, one of the mountain schools, but really displaying a lot of the same characteristics. They add a whole nother dimension to the offense with their athleticism, but having the same sort of like inconsistent processing and decision making. And that can really harm you. He has like Zach Wilson, and like even Carson Wentz type. Pulling plays out of his butt and just chucking the ball downfield. But at the same time, he has incredible arm talent. With the flick of his wrist, he can just send the ball 70 yards down the field.
Yes.
So that right there, that arm talent, right, is just enough to push him up boards already.
Yeah.
And like we said, he adds a dimension to the offense with his rushing. And if he's able to be coached into an elite level processor, you could see him really becoming and having a Josh Allen type rise, or even Jalen Hurts, where someone who wasn't that polished coming out of college is able to transform into something special.
Do you think that because of Josh Allen alone and his level of success, do you think that's enough for Levis to crack the top 5?
I mean, again, I think if you see, it's going to just be really dependent on what happens come draft day. I think it's going to be really dependent on which teams trade up. Because if you're trying to convince me that these quarterbacks are good enough for 3 teams to trade up and get them, I'm absolutely convinced. So, if it works out, so one of them is going to go at the 101. So then if the Seahawks don't take a quarterback here, the Seahawks, most likely the best move for them if they're going to roll with Geno is to move back, probably later into the top 10. You have a couple teams, you have Carolina, potentially the Raiders, that are looking to move up and get a quarterback. So for me, I'm really not convinced that Will Levis makes it out of like the top 5 or 6 picks unless there's something extremely concerning. And he's going to be a very, very polarizing player, especially among dynasty players, but even, among NFL teams, because people are going to, it's really easy to go here and look at his production and say, okay, this really isn't anything special. However, if you're evaluating him independently of even Josh Allen, like you're really looking at Will Levis and his intangibles, and you're really encouraged by what you see. And I think people who are really getting into Will Levis's tape and what he's good at and his raw ability are excited about Will Levis. And then you have, I think, part of the community that may not like Will Levis because they think he should have performed better even given the situation that he was in. But then they're also looking at his production and they're like, yeah, so he's going. Listen, I guarantee in our comments here we're going to get a bunch of Will Levis sucks, or Will Levis had the worst situation, or you guys are over exaggerating. But in reality, when you're talking about the level of quarterback that's come out of the college in the last even last year, and how many teams are looking for quarterbacks now, it's I'd be hard pressed not to believe that there are going to be teams that trade up and try to get a quarterback here, and that the quarterbacks are going to go pretty quickly here.
Yeah, I think. With Levis specifically, one of the biggest knocks on him, one of the biggest questions we have going into the draft is what's up with some of the decision-making or lack thereof. Like, why is he missing some of these reads? Why is he making some of these dumb throws? But really, for every dumb throw, there's like 5 ridiculous ones that he makes in really tight windows.
Yeah,
but what do you think is attributed to that?
Too.
Right.
Sure.
Which he hasn't really panned out.
My quick answer to that is I think that's why he is
still our QB3.
Yes.
Well, but my comp for him is Matt Stafford. I see a lot of that in Stafford too. Stafford has a really good arm, and you saw him production-wise, like even in the bad Lions years, he was very, very solid. And when he went to the Rams, he went into such a better situation, had immediate success, had Cooper Kupp. He looked really, really good because the situation was better for him. But one thing that you've continued to see from Matt Stafford that you probably won't ever see go away is that questionable decision making at times. I mean, Matt Stafford pretty notoriously throws a lot of pick sixes. I mean, so it's like when he's making a bad decision, it's a terrible decision. And with Will Levis, I actually don't think that all of his decisions are necessarily awful. But again, with him coming out and sometimes making these questionable decisions, having that arm talent, I think he's more athletic than Matt Stafford. So I say from a comp standpoint, there are definitely some differences. But when I'm looking at the decision-making paired with the arm talent, that's the first person I think of. I think Matt Stafford's a great quarterback. I think he makes questionable decisions. I think we see a lot of that from Will Levis.
Yeah, I think what you're going to hear from us throughout the offseason when we're talking about Levis is we're just going to scream situation.
Yep.
College situation and even NFL situation. There is a chance that with Levis probably going not ahead of Stroud and Young, that he ends up in a better situation than those two, and that he could take off as a dynasty asset and an NFL quarterback sooner than Bryce Young and Stroud could.
Absolutely.
It's possible.
No, I think that's a great point. I think that's going to be the case with any deep QB class. You could be looking, if there's a very balanced and deep QB class, you could be looking at the bottom end of that and looking at the situations they're going to and saying, oh man, I mean, like this guy could end up being the most productive right away because he went into the best situation. Now, with the guys who are going to go one-on-one, with the Youngs, with the Strouds, you've got to think, long term, they're going to build their organizations, they're going to build their franchises around this dude. Obviously, they wouldn't have drafted him this high if they weren't going to do that. So I think that's a great point. And with the rushing upside, I mean, you could look at Will Levis potentially having a fantasy impact. I mean, right away. And obviously with Will Levis, you're going to want to see him, and this might not be possible, you're going to want to see him throw more touchdowns. I mean, you're going to want to see him throw at a little bit of a higher volume from a passing yards rate. But then you're also going to want to see him be able to scramble out of the pocket and add, I mean, again, I like to even 30 yards, like rushing yards per game, even 3 or 4 points per game from rushing. Not to mention if he can get in the end zone because he's a big dude, you get to the 1 yard line, you use the QB sneak, and then you get 6 points for a rushing touchdown. I think all of that combines to him potentially being a fantasy impact from day one, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, talking in Dynasty, getting into our rookie drafts, what are we saying? Are we saying we take him 104 after Bryce Young and CJ Stroud?
That's a great question.
I think it could get to that. I'd have a hard time taking Gibbs over him.
I think I'm getting to that point too. I think JSN is probably the most.
JSN's the one guy.
Call our shots.
Yeah, but again, I think I'm willing to call our shot here. I mean, I think Will Levis is the 104 in Dynasty come the spring. I think barring something very unexpected or barring that the NFL just completely hates him, which we've seen with quarterbacks before, it's absolutely possible. Right now, Will Levis is, and this is we could look back and this could be stupid in a year, but we're going to do it anyway. Will Levis. I mean, I think it's Bijan, and then you've got Stroud and Young in whatever order, and then you've got Levis, and I think Levis, if he gets that top 5, top 7 draft capital, is absolutely in a super flex league. You absolutely should be taking him over Gibbs. You absolutely should be taking him over JSN. Each of those guys has question marks, and then that really pales in comparison to the draft capital that you're throwing at Will Levis.
Now JSN could still be debatable. What if JSN goes top 10?
JSN's not going top 10.
I don't think
I'd be willing to call that shot.
London went top 10.
I know.
But think about
JSN's not Drake London.
That's a good question, though. Even if he did, what if they both went top 10? You take a quarterback, right? You take a top 10 quarterback over top 10 receiver.
Well, it's a guarantee with the receiver, in my opinion. But
yeah,
these are all great questions.
Yeah.
So it's up to each of us with our own picks. But I mean, I think the three of us have kind of subscribed to the fact that you got to take at the position of scarcity.
That's good, Nathan. All right, real quick as we wrap this up, landing spots. We got back to this now. We circled back. Texans, I don't think he goes 101, but if he did, that might be a rough start for Will Levis, I think. The Seahawks, not bad. The Lions, again, I think the Lions are looking like a pretty attractive QB destination here. They've got a good offensive line that would allow Will Levis to develop his decision-making a little bit. They get elite weapons. I think that would be a great spot for him. And in terms of the Lions and the Falcons, even the Panthers, they're all looking.
They're all in striking range. They can all trade up. Though I just hope Will Levis stays blue going in the NFL. So
yeah, I 100%
go to Indy.
Go to the Giants. All right.
Oh my God.
Let us know in the comments what you think of Will Levis. Let us know where you think he's going to be going. If we're crazy for thinking he's going to go this high, what you thought of his situation, etc. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like the video. We've got all kinds of new Dynasty and fantasy content coming your way this Dynasty offseason. As always, we appreciate you listening, and thanks for joining us.